You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
This makes my nipples hard.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us on the show today. You're going to laugh at me. I haven't even started being weird yet.
Guys, hi.
Hey guys.
Are you there?
Really happy to have you here. Okay, but we had to start it that way because there is no correlation. We're talking about Monkey Island 2 because last time we talked about Monkey Island 1. So
and that's
this
how
time,
numbers work. Exactly.
it's LeChuck's revenge, and clearly his revenge is that we don't know how to talk about it. That's a great start. But no, we jumped headlong with excitement into playing the next game in the Monkey Island series, or at least I jumped headlong with excitement into it, and Paul eventually followed. Right?
Is headlong a saying, or is that like a Canadian thing?
It's like headlong, head first. I don't know the
right,
origins.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, we'll pick that apart later, or right now, because I'm struggling to understand the length of one's head having anything to do with going forward into an endeavor, but it's fine. It's fine.
No, it's a real thing. It's an adjective. It means done in a rush without thinking carefully. It also can be used as an adverb with the head first, as in she fell headlong into the pool, or recklessly with great speed. Sorry for the echo. I got excited.
Now we all have to wonder how you had that on hand. Like immediately. You just immediately produced the dictionary explanation for that word. That was insane.
It's called Google.
Man, but it's like you're so used to my bullshit that you started searching it before I think I even took it apart. You're like, I'm going to have this one on deck. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, no, I'm ready for you right here, right now. This is a real word, and I don't know its origins, but it's a thing.
Well, I hate it.
You've jumped headlong into that opinion.
Man. That's fair. I made that bad. Okay. All right. Well, as Anna was alluding to, she made me play another Monkey Island game.
And I'm not done yet.
Yes, she's into it, and therefore I am too. So
it's, you know what? It's fun. It felt longer, but it felt a little like up until the last end of the game, it felt a little bit easier other than like a heavy duty amount of inventory management.
I like this game a lot more than the first one. I really like Monkey Island 2. What is your quick verdict between the two so far?
Oh, it's fun. I love that it's divided into islands. I like that there's no time limit. I like the overhead map. I like that there was more clickable items in the background, so I could spend more time mousing around, clicking over, hearing descriptions of things.
Knock it off.
I'm just mousing around with you. It's all right. It was fun. It was fun. I was frustrated at the end, and I still loved it. I didn't have any problem convincing myself to go back to this game until it was complete. It probably took me, I don't know, maybe 7 hours or something, give or take, because what I was doing was I was doing everything I could without looking at any hints at all. But then after I'd finally kind of get stuck and I had to repeat going back and forth a bunch of times, I'd be like, it's like, I can't believe I missed picking that up. But because it's hand painted, almost has that look. Sometimes I had trouble picking out items from the background to be what I needed in my inventory.
Right. I agree. Yeah, 100%. I went about it the same way. So for the rules of engagement for the listeners, this is how we played the game, man. It took me about 7 hours too. Okay, what did you like more? And without going too much into the second game, because let's slow burn that. But just comparatively, 1 versus 2, what do you like? What do you like more?
The first one felt more puzzly, like you had to. It felt more like it wasn't. It was linear? A little bit more chore-like. The first one, it felt a little more fetch questy. Without this one had, I mean. It had more unusual ideas to implement with its own logic, but it didn't feel as fetch questy. It felt a little more well-rounded to me.
Did you like one over the other? Do you rank them equally?
It's tricky. The first one really made me laugh 2 or 3 times, like actually laugh in my living room randomly for no reason. People are looking at me going, what's so funny? And the second one, I enjoyed it, I think, more overall, thoroughly, but it did not once make me like stop and kind of catch myself and laugh out loud the same way.
Awesome. Okay, I like that. I agree. I more or less agree. The laughing point I agree to, because last episode we even did like a little LOL counter, at least on my end. I was like, okay, that's the 4th time. So I think it's like oddly well cataloged. How many exact times the first game made me laugh, and it was precisely 2 more times than this one. Because again, both games are less laugh out loud funny and more just you smile the whole time you play. But okay. So for I think maybe a little difference here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is I think I really rank this one way above number 1, and for you it sounds like they're a little closer than that.
If number 1, how would I put it? If number 1 was a 70, okay. If number 1 was an 83, to be kind to people who love these games, then I think number 2 could be sitting at a 90. Okay.
I'm not prepared to give numbers to them.
And frankly, I bandy them about with carelessness, and it always comes back to bite me.
Right. I try not to be so cavalier with numbers regarding Monkey Island games.
Well, there's a lot out there. I was kind of intimidated to even release a game on Monkey Island. I'm like, oh my gosh, people might actually listen to this one.
I know. Did they? Did either of us look? We usually don't look.
I did. Yeah. It was the same amount of people listen to this episode now as the last episode, but they're both hovering around the same number.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So, okay, quick annotations to the first game since we're
I love annotations.
Yeah, man. Oh boy. Since we're easing our way into this, I wanted to say about the first game quickly. As listeners can imagine, you finish an episode on it, you've like analyzed the crap out of it, and then it's almost like when you get into an argument and you think of like the thing you should have said right after it, like dang, that was the zinger. I should have said that. It's kind of like that. It's like after the episode, I always think of the things that I should have said on the episode. This isn't actually as profound as I'm setting it up to be. It was just an extra thing I wanted to mention about the first game. 2 of them, and one of them was one's a pro, one's a con. Which we do first?
Let's do a con first, since this is overall going to be a mostly pleasant conversation.
Right. Okay. So the con was I didn't bring up the first game's utter lack of hotspots in interactability and therefore exploration.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's exactly what I appreciated so much about the second one.
They came good on that. They definitely better on that. By no means was it up to, Sierra standards, therefore what I prefer in a game, but they did better.
Yeah.
I'll save it for when we get in. I do have a little note on that. But the first game was disappointing how little interaction there was. Like even in the scene, for example, where you're on the dock staring out at the ocean, like there isn't even anything for the ocean or the moon, or like the only 2 things in the scene. Like there was just nothing to really click on or look at or do except for the things that you had to click on or look at or do. And it helped me actually understand to a degree why everybody nowadays is more or less just okay with that. Like people don't seem to tremendously value the ability to explore much, and they prefer things like hotspot highlighters, and like they just kind of want to get on with it. So looking at Monkey Island, it's like, well, I guess that's why. Like this is their benchmark, and they don't do it, so why would you feel that you need it? But it was a bummer for me, and it really drug things out with Strummer a lot, because he's used to me wanting to do that, so therefore he's been brainwashed, indoctrinated into like that's how we play adventure games together. We look at all the things, and it made it a little it made it feel more checklisty for both of us, where it's just like just had to get it over with sort of vibe, because it was more about just getting to the solution and to the end than just enjoying the ride. So, okay, I just wanted to mention that I was surprised to see how little there were. I was expecting less, because I have this framework in my head of Sierra has lots of exploration and LucasArts doesn't. And I was shocked to see how little they really did have. I was like, damn, like they are giving you nothing here. There's nothing to look at except for the things that need to be looked at. So that was a shock and a detriment for me. But the pro was that the first game had no, and more or less the second game doesn't either, but the first game doesn't have any grandiose animated cutscenes or introductions or let's just say there's no like animated scenes, and sometimes I think like people are I don't know, people judge the quality of a modern adventure game based on that element of polish, that element of like animation and cutscenes, and just like, you know, everything's a little TV show-esque or something like that. And
the third one does that well, actually.
Right, yes. Yeah, the third one's probably a lot of that. I don't know, but I know without knowing, because we got the, you know the vibes of these games by now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked how the first game doesn't do that. It's just an awesome game without it. Like, it just goes to show that you don't need you don't need it. You don't need it, and that not only that you don't need it, but that's not necessarily what makes an adventure game great. It's like, you know, tons of polished, smooth, cartoon-like or otherwise, you know, animations for every cutscene. Like, it can just be like more or less kind of filmed in front of a live studio audience sort of vibe, and clunky but charming animations and stuff like that. So, and obviously, especially anybody that's played my game, that's the direction I went, and I kind of felt validated by Monkey Island 1 by just being like, so you don't need to, like, just, you know, make good dialogue and make it fun and do the animations when they're called for and stuff like that. So anyway, I enjoyed that it was it's so beloved, and it lacks, you know, those type of cutscenes a lot. So okay, and then before we move on to 2, do you have anything that you wanted to cover on 1 that you thought of later?
No, not really.
No, I thought of everything on time. Thank you.
You had me thinking of the two, like, in Monkey Island 2, the two fanciest graphically animated cutscenes in the whole thing are one, what's his name, Legrand's Luigi at the beginning. And when, you know, it animates it flying across the screen and landing on the wall. Yeah. And then the second one being when the match is lit right before the dynamite goes off on the boat, and that match flitting across in front of the TNT boxes is one of the prettiest animations I think I've seen in a classic game.
Yes, it's so smooth. The way for both of those scenes, the way they blurred the background. I was watching and just like, how did they do that? Like, I know how I would do it now with Photoshop, but I'm like, how did they pull that off?
I love, and I said it in the last episode, but I'll say it again, I did absolutely love the way that LeChuck was presented, as well as the other ghosts, colorfully in number 1. And in number 2, they were a little bit more cartoonish, and they lost that sort of ethereal neon vibe that they had going on in the first.
And that makes me excited. The pro to that is what makes me excited to play the third one, because it seems like I really like how LeChuck's seems to be, and again, I'm going to be assuming here because I haven't played the third one, but it looks to me that he's a ghost in the first one, a zombie in the second, and like a demon in the third one.
Yeah,
and that's really cool because it covers like kind of the 3, I don't know, pillars of villainism, of villainy. And then I love that evolution of him. That's super cool. So. But I did obviously miss like the ethereal glow and things like that. But I appreciated the zombie, you know, the way like hunches and limps around in this rotting corpse sort of vibe was very cool.
Yeah, I like that too. I really like that.
All right, let's start off with the way we try to do this, our loose guidelines here. We'll start off with part 1, the Largo embargo, and we'll just use this to help us trigger little memories of the game and walk people through it with us. So Guybrush arrives on Scab Island, boasting about his victories. This little scene was why I hesitated to say no polished cutscenes in the second game, because there is this one, there's the aforementioned that you brought up, and then there's when he's talking to the guys around the campfire, it's kind of like oddly HD, you know, like the sprites are much larger, there's more detail, and then again on the Fisherman's Wharf, when he's talking to the fisherman, who has like one of the greatest sprite scene moments in adventure games, when he side-eyes Guybrush. You know what I mean? His little cute side-eye that he gives him. It's adorable. I like that character. Oh, man. But anyway, so we start off in this cutscene. He's telling his story, and then he heads over to the bridge where we meet Largo Le Grande, and
Largo Le Grande is based on where Ron Gilbert grew up in Oregon.
Oh, love it. Nice with the facts.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's that good stuff. So Largo's, you know, I should say too, Anna and I both played the Ultimate Talkie edition here, so there'll be there'll be references of the voice acting and stuff throughout.
Oh my God, so good. I just have to say, I absolutely love the way that Dominic says for Guybrush, my spit is thick.
Right, I did too. It was oddly satisfying. Yeah,
so
thick.
good.
Makes it
It's
thick.
so good.
Like right. He had something in his mouth when he said it. If you could feel, yeah, it's so good.
Oh my God, I love that. And I like where they took those puzzles too.
And I don't Star Wars very much, but I thought that Dominic nailed the "You're my brother, Luke, the father" reference line at the end. Like he really,
very good.
He really sold that
Dominic's
full
so
sale. He committed to that.
He's so good at just being like, oh yeah, it's da-da-da. Like just saying it in such a natural, casual, real way that it makes me want to hear him say it over and over and over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah. Well said, exactly right.
Oh,
yeah.
And thank you for clearing it up. OneShortEye clarified that, yes, it was Dominic Armato that was wearing the Stan's jacket at the Hotspot fanfare. Indeed, because we both remembered, but for some reason we didn't have that notion.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, the fanfare was such an awesome weekend. It was cool for Anna and I. We presented an award and we were brought up on stage by Dominic Armato. And there's just something trippy about that, right? To be like, I just remember telling Strom, I'm like, hey, this is, the Guybrush is the guy who brought us on stage at the thing. And he's like, please make sense of what you just said to me. That's outrageous in so many levels. I was like, it's a little abstract, but it's not a leap.
No.
Okay, so anyways, so we get to, we're in Woodtick and we're looking around. We just lose all of our money. Awesome adventure game trope. In this instance, it's like the birth of a trope where you have tons of money for a second, you can't touch it, and then it's gone. That was really fun.
And in the first game, that's what it's all about. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, you need money! You need money! You need money!" It was really important. So for them, I think they were mentioning. Ron mentioned in an interview that that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to give you all the money you fought so hard for in the first game, and then to take it away because they wanted to be a little bit mean-spirited with this game, which I did notice. It was a little mean-spirited in general all the way through.
Oh, it's wildly mean-spirited. Yeah, yeah. I have a note here that says. Within 15 minutes, I got a guy fired, then took his job, then stole a week's pay, and then stole a guy's only means of seeing the work he does to make a living. Mm-hmm. And a little later, we'll steal a whole monkey and saw off a man's leg.
Yeah.
This is all.
Yeah, and you just leave them. You don't get to free these people from wherever you entrap them in either. Like at one point, you lock Stan in a coffin, and it's like, no, he's just there now.
Yeah, it's. Right, exactly. It's so. I guess let's get into this for a second because I'm torn on how to feel about this on so many different levels. And to anybody listening who hasn't played the game, we have to spoil the end. If you don't know the ending, then please tell us because I just want to know. That's adorable. Like I want to know that there's somebody out there that still doesn't know the ending. But this is last call or whatever for ending stuff because. The way that Guybrush treats people in this game is slightly justified by the ending, or at least one of the interpretations of the ending. So, okay, again, spoiler time's over, so I'm just going to say it now, and I'm saying it. So, if you interpret the ending as that it really was just two kids playing in the theme park, and this was in his imagination. So this kind of omits the final scene in the game with Governor Marley, because she kind of reels that back in, like, well, maybe LeChuck's... what would you say, voodoo, where he was supposed to send Guybrush into another dimension. Maybe he did send him into another dimension, and so it is all real, but in this dimension, he's the child of these two people and in a theme park. Like in this dimension, it's a theme park. Is that what you got from that?
The parents run, okay, so it starts out when he climbs the tree and he falls, and he has a vision of his dead parents dancing because he's a grown-up and his parents are dead. And then next, at the end of the game, there's the scene where the parents are dead in the room and he's dealing with LeChuck. Mm-hmm. So, like, at this point, you're hitting obvious dreamlike qualities. Because why else would his parents' skulls be dead in LeChuck's lair randomly? Like, obviously, there's something mysterious going on. Something else is going on, which is what leads me to believe... I'm so stuck between the two. I watched Pushing Up Rose's video on it. There's like this 12-minute video where she talks about the different ending perceptions of the game. And one part of me wants to say, yes, he was a kid the whole time, and it totally makes sense because of the juvenile humor and his juvenile personality and all of the jokes, and they kind of intuitively hint towards it the whole time. But then another part of me says, well, if that's the case, it almost seems more like he was put into another dimension or that time was rewound to me because of that little, like, the turning of his head and showing that he is LeChuck at the end and all that. But I don't know. It can't be mired in reality. There's no way.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, that was a really good video too. I saw it after I played it the first time, but I haven't rewatched it. Okay, so let me get clarity on you. When you said that the parents were dead in his lair, do you mean like in the not Lost and Found, but in the office of the theme park where like they're there waiting? Right.
Yeah, I guess where they were there waiting, and then you have to take your dad's head.
Right there. Okay.
Which means they've been there,
like it's heavily implied it is a theme park. I mean, you don't know that yet, right? If you hadn't finished the game, but I mean, it's like something's going on because there's immediately congruent items throughout. Like there's the whole sewer system is like metal and pipes and things that wouldn't have existed in the time of pirates. There's a grog machine. Well, there's a grog machine first.
At the very, very beginning of the game, when you're in that hole blasted in the ground with Elaine, when Ron was being interviewed as the group of them for the commentary, they were talking about what those things were supposed to be. Was it brush and was it bush up around the top of the hole, or was it rebar and was it metal? And technically, they blended the two together, and it was a little bit of both, which kind of, to me, is an idea of the, time travel or something being unusual aspect.
Right. Well, because I think even in the game, when you use the rope and the crowbar on the the thing, like the hotspot is called twisted metal, twisted pieces of metal or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has to be, it has to be rhubarb, whatever one's not the weird treat thing. What am I thinking of? Rhubarb? Isn't that a cake or some shit?
Yeah.
Pie?
No, rhubarb is the fruit. Rebar is the...
Oh, it is a fruit. Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Well, we're all learning stuff here today. At least I am.
But yeah, it all leads me to believe it's almost as if he had left the theme park and for so long that his parents died waiting for the both of them. And then when he met up with LeChuck, they sent him back in time, but maybe he doesn't remember what happens between leaving that theme park and being an adult. But it all does connect with him being like, I'm a mighty pirate. Like, that's what an 8-year-old would say. I'm a mighty pirate. And then fighting with insults and stuff like that. Like,
Right. And I will, because I'm not done with this yet, so we'll wander back to what started this, which was saying the justification of Guybrush's shitty behavior throughout the game. Because to tag on to that real quick, that is the justification. What you just hit on there is like if this was just two kids playing in a theme park and the game is largely their imagination, then yeah, he's just like a little 10-year-old kid, pretending, and there's no consequences to his actions, and so therefore it's easier to get behind, as opposed to like, I want to like the protagonist because I am the protagonist and I don't want to be this terrible to everybody I meet, as Guybrush is to everybody in this game. But now you brought up another paradox, because I was pretty well set on like this was always going to be a theme park, and the Marley part was tacked on to just be like, whoa, now you don't know what to think, which it does a wonderful job of doing. And they did plant that line that LeChuck has earlier where it's supposed to send you into another dimension, the voodoo. So it's like maybe it did, like it, that supports Marley's end scene quite a bit, where it's like you could make a case for it based on that. But it seems like before, when you're wandering through the forest looking for, what are you looking for with the parrot when you're feeding him crackers? When you're looking for, I guess, just a piece of the map, is it?
Yeah. You end up getting him to lead you to the X for the treasure.
That's what you're looking for, the X. You already have the map. So during that part, but it's before you're in the underground. You're seeing bushes cut into the shape of dinosaurs and dolphins and such. Like, it seems like an overgrown theme park, or it seems like the theme park bleeding into his imagination.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even clue in. Of course, east at the pond to the dinosaur.
That's a great parrot.
Yeah.
That's very good. You should use that in the bedroom with James. Right, just a little left.
It's a very good parrot too. Turns out we have a talent. All right. Actually, I do bird calls. That's one of my things. I'm not doing any now, but I have a repertoire.
Love it. I do bird calls. It's
a thing.
It's not a big deal, but
Try taking me to the forest one day. You'll see.
be pretty hard to lose me in there. Okay, so yeah, okay. I'm glad to have brought new evidence to the discussion, and also another quick little side note to the listeners. Neither of us have finished Return to Monkey Island, so if this is addressed and dealt with, then I imagine maybe what we're talking about is a little frustrating because we're missing that piece of the puzzle. But I don't know I don't know how to reconcile that. I'm just saying. So yeah, there's aspects of the theme park before, even when you shut off the waterfall. That's I think the first time you see like this very.
Oh, a valve, right? Good point.
Yeah, you see the valve that use the monkey wrench on it, and then when you go into the waterfall, it's a metal sewer. Like there's bolts and things like that there wouldn't. I mean, yeah, there's like metal in pirate days. There's jail cells and stuff like that. But that the way that the sewer is presented is modern. It's not 500 years ago metal work. Does that make sense?
Right. It does.
Okay, so it's like you're seeing traces of I guess the modern world like bleeding into the story. And so anyway, I guess I don't really know what point I'm really trying to make here, except for that it's all very confusing and vague on purpose.
It is.
But
very
I love it.
Confusing
I
and
really
vague. I like the ambiguity. That's that's what creates a series, isn't it? That's why it's been going from 1990 all the way up to 2022 in various forms.
Exactly right. And I try my best always to understand everybody's perspective, but I have a hard time walking in the shoes of people who don't like this ending. And
I think it's great. And
the same goes to the Thimbleweed Park ending, which I guess we could space that out. I'll get into that later, maybe. Who knows? Because I almost see the Thimbleweed Park as a better execution of this. Like Ron had time to really, because what I heard developmentally speaking was Ron came up with this idea late in the game, and that was the best I could do. I tried to find like exactly when, but it seemed like late into development. I don't know if that's halfway or further, but quote unquote late in development, he said that he got the idea for the theme park. But we've also heard that he had it beforehand. Doesn't matter. The point being is that it seems like this maybe wasn't the idea all along with this game. That's the impression that I get. But then again, you shared something from Noah Faustian this morning that makes it sound like it was the idea all along.
It does. That was, and that was from Daniel Albu in the interview that he had done with Noah, and he put out a short when he was talking about, somebody on Facebook was talking about what is the ending after all, and he's like, oh, I know. That makes sense, yeah. And he said, yeah, we've essentially known this is what it was going to be, and
yeah, he worded it, I think something along the lines of it just never really materialized in the first game, but that
which it didn't, yeah,
right. But that made it sound like that was always the plan all along. And then the second game, well, okay, here's the case for Ron knew it the whole time is the way Guybrush treats people, and then we can actually full circle back into on track here. Okay, all right, we'll just put a pin in that, I guess, for now or whatever, and I'll just say that if it turns out that it was like a theme park thing, then it makes it all more bearable. But it's still almost like uncomfortable to play as Guybrush being. I mean, that's really dramatic of me. It's not like it was actually uncomfortable. But it's like, it makes me like him a lot less. And that's weird. That creates like a strange dissonance between you and the game. Because as you're playing, you're like, man, I'm the worst person. Like, I just sawed this guy's leg off. Like, I didn't really need to do that. and the mouse was their pet, and I stole him too. And I steal a dog and a monkey, and
yeah, putting animals in your inventory took me a while to figure out you needed to do, because that's not something you generally need to do.
Right.
But I'm like, am I going to pet the dog? Oh, I'm going to take the dog. Oh, okay.
Take the whole dog, yeah.
Well, that's, I love the way that they used Guybrush's eyeballs in the second game are amazing. Like, so expressive. The way that they expanded the whites and would have his, like, the little pupil looking around.
Yeah, that was all the character animations were they nailed them. Same as that was the biggest strength of the first game too. Was the little, and I liked how when you put the ridiculous things in your inventory, only then did they animate it. So that's when they would.
It's like the monkey was in a position to fit in the inventory box
right.
when you put it in the inventory, which is great. And I do want to take a second, as I mentioned I would, about the music. And they used iMuse, and it was very complicated. They said it took many people many hours of many programmings, and it was not something they ever really continued to use because it was just too much. But what it did do, and of course you being a musical person would have noticed, is that the theme song runs in behind everything you do where you are, but it subtly changes through instruments when you go into different shops. And that was the iMuse.
Right. Yeah. The iMuse system is really cool. It's almost, I think it's one of those things where it seems like just utterly brilliant on paper, and then in application it turns out it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know, I guess it's just our brains seem to just sort things into the background. We don't focus on what we don't need to pay attention to. It's not deemed like relevant enough during gameplay, the music. So music can kind of get away with things that's how I would articulate it. I think music can get away with things that you wouldn't think that it could. Because in application, when you're actually playing the game, our brains are deeming a lot of things irrelevant. I mean, look at how low of a resolution that we accept as real life, as an acceptable avatar for a human being and their behavior. I mean, just in the pixels, like even tiny little 6-pixel Guybrush when he's walking across an island.
That's what I was just saying. On the map, that's what he is, right? It's just a little bit. You can see it. You can see his pants. You can put it all together mentally. You're working on that. So.
And they move 1 pixel out and in for a leg. And it's all you need. Your brain right away is just like, that's Guybrush and he's walking across the island. I'm sure of it.
I know it is.
and I guess I'm using that as an example to say like that's the degree to which our brains are fantastic at deeming things irrelevant and discarding it. Like don't need to focus on it. It's not important. Because, if everything was relevant, we would be insane. I'm pretty sure that's literally what schizophrenia is that you're unable to, you find everything relevant in schizophrenia. And that's where you see like these papers where they just draw like what looks like alien mathematics, and their mind is just constantly wrestling with everything being relevant. So it's like in a situation, thank God that, for that, when that's not the case for you, hopefully all of our listeners, we're basically, I'm trying to say that the music is deemed irrelevant enough to where noticing these slight like nuanced blending, where like it's like this gentle handoff from one song to the next. It's definitely not a hindrance. It's not bad. It's definitely, I guess, better than.
I didn't fully notice till I knew about it and then went back and paid attention to it.
There you go. Exactly.
It was so smooth and so good that it blended right into the game, and it was just a part of the game's personality. But then I realized, you walk into here, you have a little bit more of this, a little bit less of this. Okay, yeah, that's cool though.
Right. It's like a neat little luxury item. But when you play another, you play any other adventure game and the music changes drastically from one scene to the next, nobody's like, oh God, that was so jarring. It just switched from one song to the next. Like it's not, we don't notice it. Yeah. So it's really cool. And it took a lot of work, but we don't need it.
We don't need it.
Yeah. Which I guess that's the conclusion they drew. You said that there was basically just too much work.
It was just too much work. Yeah, it took too many people. It took way too much time, and it was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I feel for him in a sense too, because you could see why it sounded like just such a game-changing, awesome idea that would almost change the industry going forward. And at the end of the day, we're like, yeah, I kind of notice it.
Kind of like games like Toonstruck changing the industry. This is the next epic entertainment venue for human beings going forward. Let's invest all this time, energy, and money into it because it's the thing. Whoops.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, it is kind of the thing. It's just a little different. Like my kid has been playing Detroit Become Human. And it's a game where you get to play 3 different AI robots in 3 different situations, and you're trying to figure out who's human or not. And it's very like, it's what they were trying to go for with games like Toonstruck, in a way, like the beginning of it. I mean, it did pave the way for stuff like that.
Right. Right, exactly. There's definitely influence. And I think Monkey Island, I mean, obviously influenced a bunch of games. Guybrush has shown up in other genres. I think it was like Uncharted or something he recently showed up in. Recently is in like the last 5 years. I don't know.
That's for us. For classic gamers, it's recent if it's in the last 20 years. The
Right,
Other
that's
Day
fair.
is like the last 20 years too.
And Monkey Island, dang, I meant to pull this document for this episode because it was like 5 or 6 years ago. I actually put a little comparison together of the similarities between the things that Pirates of the Caribbean took from Monkey Island, and I think it was undisputable proof that the Pirates of the Caribbean movie I don't know which one because I've never seen the series actually. It was one of the first 2 movies, let's say. But there's using a using a coffin for a boat happens in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and using the voodoo priestess's lair is essentially in the movie as well. Like the idea of like a skull that opens up and then delivers you into its mouth or whatever, like that seemed pretty exact. So anyway, there seems to be things in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie that had to have been taken from Monkey Island, especially considering...
Right. It's just, it would be full circle if it was, because Ron Gilbert visits Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. He gets influenced. He makes the Monkey Island game. And then Hollywood gets wind of the Monkey Island game and takes it for influence. It's really full circle.
Yeah, I would love to ask him or anybody on the team, their thoughts on those like specific scenes from the movie that seem lifted from inspired by Monkey Island or whatever. Because I'm sure the answer is it's just as likely that it was as that it wasn't. But it's fun to just assume that it was. Okay, let's move on with the game. So, is there anything? I'm just kind of we're doing fine without our usual little walkthrough thing here. So just to get through part 1, formally speaking, this is where we obtain the hair, collect the spit, acquire a piece of clothing, and retrieve the grandfather's remains, and then off to Scab Island we go. So that's where we're at, I guess, story beat wise, and then we get into part 2, the 4 map pieces. I should just be abandoning this because, again, we're kind of just doing fine without all this. But is there anything that comes to mind, I guess you could say, as I mentioned what we did to create Largo's voodoo doll?
It was kind of fun because you have to set up like the bucket on the door setup to get Largo his clothing wet so that he can get a ticket, so that you can go to the dry cleaners, so that you can have something that's of his. It ends up being like a bra or whatever. Right. But it's just so funny where they take the clothing in this game, right? But I don't know. It was a fun joke. I think it was a really fun way to finish out the day. I liked that. You know what? It didn't feel like the beginning of the second Monkey Island game was a guide, or what do they call it? Where they help you play a game and figure it out.
Right,
tutorial. It didn't feel like it was a tutorial. It felt like the kind of game that just jumped into the damn game to me.
Right.
I liked that about it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that works especially for a second game where it's like they assume you know the world and the characters and how the game wants to be played. Okay, the only note I have, I guess, really early on in the game, because it did take me until the second act to really start making notes. I just had the within 15 minutes note that I already read everybody, which is hilarious. You get a guy that may even be the second act. Look, doesn't matter. Not a chronological person. So the only note I definitely have from the first act is that the puzzles are half more fun and half more rushed than the first game. So I think what Past Me is trying to say there is that the puzzles in this game I found a lot more fun, but some of them were bullshit.
Yeah, there was a few where I'm like, there's no freaking way I would have ever figured that out. So,
right, yeah, exactly. What was your most frustrating puzzle?
The most frustrating would be at the end with LeChuck. I had no idea that you were supposed to give him a wedgie.
Right. Yes.
I did not. I couldn't. I was like, what am I missing? I'm clicking all the things on him. And I ended up getting that one, but it was on a random click, not because. And then to figure out, you have to use the hanky on him after to get his spit. Like, I had a hard time
that
with
was really
that
unfair.
whole setup. And then, like, the money, I kept taking the money out of the grog machine and then making it roll across the ground and then picking up the money again and trying to figure out why.
Ah, okay. Now I get what your critique about the too many inventory items. Now I get that because, yeah, I wasn't totally on board with that. I'm like, I thought it was fine, and now I'm realizing, yeah, the reason why the loogie, for example, was so frustrating was because of the inventory. Like I forgot that I had a napkin to and I guess their hint maybe is that it's a clean napkin is the way they word it, as in maybe it's supposed to be dirtied, but like, man. You have so much inventory at that point, and you have so little time, and it was that felt really unfair. That one, even though like that you need like his fluids or whatever from his body to make the doll, it still felt pretty brutal.
And then the other one I had real trouble with again was at the end is I had filled up both of the disposable gloves with helium for the elevator weight restriction, but I didn't open the crate that had a balloon in it. So I didn't know I needed a balloon so I could be that much lighter. So I spent forever trying to get just the right timing to chop off LeChuck's beard.
Right.
When the elevator door wasn't closing, and I'm like, where does he need? And I wasn't making the connection between the weight and the elevator. I figured it out eventually. That one I ended up going to the hints for, though.
Same, yeah, because the weight in the elevator I was not. They were asking you to do math in a sense, where they're like, it holds 1,000 pounds, and there's a 900-pound box in it, so that leaves 100. Guybrush is more than 100, and so blah blah blah. Like it was just not fair. And the in hindsight, developmentally speaking, I would have preferred it if they had either the gloves or the balloon. Like it just felt like one too many. Like, okay, we get the idea. Like if you figured out to take helium with you in form of an inflated whatever, like just accept either. Would have been a good alternate puzzle solution sort of thing too, right? Or if you have either or, you're fine. Yeah, that was rough. I didn't. So Tim Schafer designed the spit puzzle. He's the only person I can put a name to the puzzle. I tried to find more. I tried to have like he did this, he did that, but the only one.
Oh, and the martini glass in the ocean. Sorry, I did not clue in that you had to click the martini glass on the ocean for the longest freaking time.
Yeah, same.
I didn't clue in about clicking on the ocean. I didn't even hover my mouse over the ocean because I didn't realize it should have been a hotspot.
Right. It's such a part of the scene that it's hard to think, even though there was a distill whatever thing there. Yeah, that one was annoying. That one made me mad at myself because of the distill. Is it distill or distill?
It's just a still.
A still.
Like it's fantastic. A distilling still.
Okay. So the thing itself is a still. Yeah, even though there's a still there, like I don't know. I don't usually reduce liquids down to things, so I wasn't. It wasn't enough for me to be like I should get the salt out of the water.
Right, and it was, and I can see going in hindsight because the cracker says low sodium crackers. So if you were to ignore that and you were to put ocean water in it, then it wouldn't be low sodium anymore.
Okay, that's good. That's interesting because I've. Things I would like to do better myself, developmentally speaking, for the next game is to remember that in a comedy, people get real quickly used to not taking things seriously. And that's exactly what happened here with the crackers. Like you hear low sodium, whatever, and you're just like, oh, it's a throwaway joke. Everything's jokey, so why would I take the fact that this is low sodium? Like, you know what I mean? I just took it as like a little tiny little nothing joke. Like, oh, it's low sodium. That's funny because who cares if it's low sodium for a bird? Or I don't know why it's funny, but I definitely didn't think of it as a clue or a hint.
No,
it just feels a little jokey. So yeah, and that's interesting because I got myself into trouble with a few things like that in my game where it's just like everybody's used to the world being jokey. How do you cleanly deliver when it's not a joke or when this should be useful, information you take note of? Okay.
A lot of walking. Oh, and I liked it too. When you first leave the first island and you go sailing with Captain Dread, instead of following straight from one island to the next, your captain, he takes like this wonky left, right, down, around the island kind of fun trip, which it amuses me.
Right. It's very Benny Hill. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of a dick about it when it happened to me. I was just like, because I was like, they're going to do that. And then they did it. I'm like, ugh. They're doing the thing. Here we go.
Oh my God.
It's like obligational circling around a map moment. Okay, you guys, you've had your fun. Settle down.
Which is funny because I was watching the speed running. OneShortEye has a video on the speed running of this game, and he said that the game really tries to take control of Guybrush. So if you click from one place to the next, he'll follow a pre-prescribed path. But if you micromanage him, click, 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 you can kind of like lead him along by the hand and be like, no, over this way. No, come up over this way. And I hadn't thought about it, or I would have probably led him around more.
That's interesting. That's cool to know. Well, it's, you know, information would have been useful yesterday, but
A lot of walking between scenes. And it's funny because, yeah, I've heard that said, and I said it in the last game too, you know, about modern games is, oh my God, I can't believe I can't double click to quick click. It's like even in the 20th anniversary or the remake that they did of this game, they didn't double click, quick click to go anywhere faster. It's just you go somewhere. You have to walk there. Right. Get started.
I should have rewatched his video before playing. I know why I didn't too, because I tried not to rewatch or watch reviews or other, you know, well-known videos on the subject, because then I'm afraid I won't play it. I'm afraid I'll be like, I got the point. I remember this.
Yeah, I don't allow myself till after. That's my reward. And I do the same for if I'm really into a show. I'm like, I don't allow myself anything. But then once I complete it, I'm like, give me all the juicy details. I'll take it all.
To one short eyes, yeah, that threw me off a little. To one short, jeez Louise. To one short eyes point with the leading Guybrush around. That was why playing the first game with Strummer was such a comedy of errors, because I don't know if it's Scum Engine or just the way these games were scripted, but there's no block. In a lot of Sierra games, in my game and in a lot of AGS games, it's always an option, granted, so this isn't like a blanket statement, but usually when you click, let's say, the inventory on the thing, so the ashes salt shaker on the coffin, usually that creates a block where once you've done that, the game railroads to that and doesn't let you do anything until that's completed, till that script runs. But with Monkey Island, there's no blocks at all. So like no matter what you click or do, you can always stop it or interrupt it by just a click on the screen. And when Strummer discovered that in the first game, it was just chaos for 3 or 4 hours of just like, then for him, it wasn't about the game. It was the joke of, you know, just destroying our progress at any cost. And that's why I played the second game by myself.
Good call.
I made him play 20 minutes with me just to, I don't know why, actually, to flex parental power, I guess.
Because it's the godlike power of being a parent.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Take the adventure. Take it.
Take it. I wanted to see if it would grab him. Yeah, maybe that was it. It was maybe he'll want to play it on his own. He's like, am I done? He actually set a timer on the pad, and then when the timer went off, I looked at him to be like, is he going to just immediately walk away, or is he going to, you know, stay and play another? He left. He just immediately walked away. Yeah. He's like, and I'm done. Peace. So that was that. But anyway, okay. So we're on to part 2. Again, I don't know why I'm making us go through the parts thing. I don't know how to stop doing it since we started. Part 2 is the biggest part.
I can see that by the shortest write-up, yes.
Right, that's weird, right? Yeah, it was too overwhelming, I guess. Just like, yeah, bunch of crazy stuff happens, okay?
Whatever happens to Wally anyways?
I know. I don't know. And that's part of the mean-spirited part of the game.
Because first you take away his ability to work, and then you give it back to him so he can do a job for you. But then he gets kidnapped, and then you blow him up, and then he's kidnapped, and then after you blow him up, and it's a whole thing, and then he's gone.
And just to sneak one more in, after kidnapped, before blowing up, you yell at him for losing the map.
Aw, poor kid, man. And he's such a hard worker, too. He's like the most resolute hard worker in the whole game.
Yeah, especially with the voice acting, he's adorable.
I love
so
Wally.
like Oliver Twist, I guess you'd say. Like it's just really. Speaking of a note I have here is that the most Oliver joke for my game, Oliver, the most Oliver joke in the game is that you tell Wally to please stop swinging. So of course I love that. Funny. He's hanging by chains in a cell, and you're like, "Can you please stop swinging?"
See, I couldn't help but relate Oliver to Guybrush in a way because of his childlike innocence in the situation. And I was thinking, because, you know, that's one of the things I've heard about the Phantom Fellows is, oh, Oliver is quite childlike in his actions. You know, how could anybody really be like that? And it's like, well, I haven't heard that about Guybrush.
Right, yeah, right. I mean,
then it's like he really was a kid, but Oliver's not really a kid. I mean, not that I'd be giving any spoilers here.
Yeah, they would. Whoever said that has not listened to our podcast, because I think you just got to hang out with me for a while to be like, that's not. Yeah, it's just.
This is just. Yeah.
It's just a, you know, I like the whimsy way through life.
Whimsy is much more fun.
Whimsy my way through this motherfucker. Okay, so too much happens in part 2.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. Anyways, essentially, you're getting the map assembled. You have to find all 4 pieces of a map instead of voodoo ingredients. And once you have them all, you bring them to your dear cartographer after giving him a new eyeball.
Right. Yes, exactly right. So, what are some standouts here? So you go to jail. You get the classic Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride, not the movie scene there, where you're in jail and a dog has the key. Because I think that's from the ride itself, if I'm not mistaken, which I often am. But, you know, yeah. I'm almost positive that's exactly from the ride, like paying homage to it. I didn't like the mayor of Fat Island.
I was going to ask you what you thought. I was talking to Jacob about that. I'm like, this is one of the strangest, grossest characters.
It doesn't feel like it fits in this story.
It's like it should be in a game like Toonstruck.
Right, or even like they have the tentacle, or like I don't know, it just doesn't fit in
so
this.
Fairy tale weird.
It is.
Okay, so there's this like really grandiose fellow in bed, and he's all kind of gumpy and plumpy, and then like there will be a little alarm that goes, and then 3 foods shoot into his open wide mouth.
Right. Right. Yeah. So
how do you explain this character? It's quite cartoony and very strange. And I never really I think they devised it as a puzzle situation and then created the character around the puzzle is my guess.
Yeah, it almost seems like I don't maybe Tim Schafer or Steve Purcell. I would guess Tim Schafer though. Like I feel like somebody came up with this and it just isn't the same vibe. It's like a weird I don't know. It's like a weird diminished chord in the middle of the song. Like it just doesn't fit the rest of the game. Even the art direction of the scene is very like just overtly bendy and technically and Schaefery compared to the rest of the game. Not to say Monkey Island doesn't do the little bit of the classic LucasArts bendy sort of vibe, but like it just doesn't fit. And I would even argue that the entire part of the puzzle could be cut out. Like
it was kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, it seems right. It seemed like a lot of nothing, really unnecessary.
But to balance that, the librarian is brilliant.
Yes.
It's because like you get these books through the card thing and she seems like a super bitch, right? She's kind of cold and she's kind of like, But then whenever you ask her to get the book for you, she'll like wheel off in her chair with this great big like shit-eating grin on her face.
Yeah.
I love the animations.
Very proud of herself. Yeah.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Yeah,
she's and when I did like the experience with the okay, what did you think? To win the game, you had to find out what the number was going to be on the roulette game, so you had to follow the guy. And then there's another guy holding up his hands and saying, if this is 2, what's this? Like, how did you figure that out?
The walkthrough.
Me too. I couldn't figure out the math. I kept trying to say, well, if that's a 3, he has 3 fingers up, but it's a 4, so it's 1 less than... it was very confusing for me. I would like to think, in my own defense, that the happenstance was that the first one I got was a 4, and it kind of looks like a 5 because the hand's at a weird angle. And I think I tried the right way at very first, but it was wrong because I thought the hand was a 5 and not a 4. But I don't know. That seems oddly self-serving to say. I would have got it right, you guys. Totally. But if I didn't do it wrong, it would have been so right. That's brilliant. Yeah. I did make a critique note on that puzzle though, because it doesn't make any sense at all.
What did I have?
Which is another reason you think of the juvenility of it. That's a children's game. If this is 4 fingers, how many fingers is this? Like, that's such a like punch me, punch you kind of like right on that wavelength of intelligence kind of a game setup.
Right. That is, yeah, right. Haha, idiot. It's actually this. Yeah. Well, what really falls apart for me that I didn't like, and again, you could force this to work if the scenario of it being a theme park all along is the case. Which, by the way, that's another case for it being a theme park, is how everybody in the game acts like they're working at a theme park. Like the girl, the one you charter a ship from, I'm blanking on her name hard. So Capsize.
Right. I'm the one that's supposed to be keeping track of that, aren't I?
I don't know.
She is Kate Capsize.
Thank you. Kate stands outside as if she's working at a theme park, like the way she's selling her ride, let's say. And there's a couple of characters that seem like they're at a theme park selling their thing. Like, step right up. Yeah. We got a big winner here. The spit guy. And then back to the thing at hand, the spinny wheel guy. So again, that's a neat little, like, if this is a theme park, those are all clearly the people selling, the raffle
like
ticket
Voodoo
games.
Lady. If it wasn't a kid and if it wasn't a theme park, it wouldn't be let's go to the Voodoo Lady area to be like, oh, here's Madame, like, whatchamacallit.
Right, like get your palm read, get, the mystical, the great, blah, 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 and then you go and whatever. That was a lot of blahs and whatevers. I don't think I articulated anything there, but I get your point. So the spin wheel, I didn't like that at all, because it's a spin wheel. It's a game of chance. How would you know the answer? Like, how did the guy know that the next one is going to be 24 black?
There was a little bit of suspension of belief and moon logic sort of throughout this game. There was a lot of that. Like, for example, if the hotel owner chases off his alligator and now you're able to go in and out of the room, but he never comes back. Right. Little things, I mean, it's an adventure game. I get it.
Yeah, no, but I guess we have a really high bar for Ron Gilbert. He's really good at making sure you can't call him on shit. So when you find a thing or two, it's like, how did that get in there? Because to your example there, Guybrush says to Largo, oh, this must be the wrong room. But the hotel only has one room. Haha. And it's like, I expect that from a Sierra game, frankly. We would let that go in a Sierra game. But in a LucasArts game, they usually have all those things kind of tidied up. But no, I didn't like the spin wheel. It really bothered me, because you spin a wheel and you see where it lands, and like there's an argument to say like how there's like cheating in casinos, and like maybe there's little pedals under the floor where they slow the wheel down, but like the dude's not, he's in clear sight, not tampering with the wheel, and it just happens to land on where the goon in the window says it'll land. Like, that one doesn't make any sense to me, and it annoyed me. Yeah. I guess I just wanted to bitch about that one puzzle real quick.
Yeah, I can see
but
that.
A great
Otherwise,
puzzle. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. I liked the store, how you have to figure out how to buy everything in it.
Right. How to barter.
Because it's like, you can't just have everything that's there. You have to try to get the mirror away from the parrot, but you have to distract the parrot with like your bag of parrot munch that was empty that you didn't know why you randomly kept by putting it on the hook. And it's like, can I take this? And he's like, no, but maybe. And I don't know. I just found that scene really funny. That scene in the party scene, like, although you couldn't do much in there, all the people sitting in the party and all the dialogue and talking to all of them, I had great fun with that.
Yeah, really, there was a lot of great puzzles that utilized, I guess this would be in defense of the inventory. I really liked how you often utilized things that you had they felt like huge wins. Like, they weren't that complicated at the end of the day. Like, just putting a mirror when you burn the hole in the wall, and you're like, oh wait, I have a mirror, and if I put the mirror up, then it'll reflect it.
Yeah, that one I was able to figure out on my own. That was a satisfying puzzle, actually.
It was, and that's like that sweet spot of puzzles. And it's funny from a development point of view, because it's like, it's always the stuff that you think is too easy that ends up being just the right amount of hard. Because it's like, it's hard to remember, like, when you're the player playing, like, you're not going to just be hyper aware that you have a mirror. It's a weird thing that happens when you're playing, but you just don't, I don't know, you don't take constant inventory of exactly what you have.
In your inventory.
In your inventory, right. That one was a huge win. I really liked the ore puzzle. I don't remember why. I really liked that he said it was alloy, that the woodworker reinforces it with alloy. That was unnecessary and funny. But yeah, fixing the ore was cool. Like, I guess that's why I liked it, because it's like the ore breaks, you're like, oh, dang. And then it's like, oh, there's a woodworker in town. He can go fix it. And then they tried this earlier in the game in a sense that didn't land with me, which was you cut the guy's leg off of him, and then he says he needs a doctor. And it's a great joke that went above my head. But the joke is that the woodworker is the doctor for the peg leg.
Oh, that's cute. Dr. Wood, yeah.
Right. That's really good. But it was too much for a puzzle. I'm like, I don't know why I'm cutting this man's leg off. I didn't know it was to draw the woodworker out of his shop. And there seems like there's so many other ways. But alas. Another good puzzle was putting, I immediately forgot her name, Kate Capsize's poster face over your face. That was great.
I like that. And then they arrest her. That's good stuff.
Yeah, that was good. Man, what an asshole. Guybrush is the worst in this game.
I know, and she didn't even do anything wrong.
No, yeah. She even takes you back out at sea if you don't get the treasure the first time.
Oh, getting the books at the library was rather convoluted, especially if you don't know what you're getting. And sometimes you don't know what you're supposed to get till you come across it in the game and you realize you don't have it. And there's like literally 100 books to choose from.
Right. Right, that's fair. And that brings me to a separate point regarding the Dewey Decimal System or whatever. Ron Gilbert seems to put all of his hotspots in one area.
Yeah, I see that too.
I don't like it. I have a reason for not liking it. It's going to sound quite pretentious, and I'll say it in a second. But he does this in Thimbleweed Park as well. He likes to keep all the jokes, all the hotspots that I think should be scattered throughout the entire game, just in this one concentrated area to where it's just overwhelming and they all go underappreciated because there's like 100 things to look at. And it's like, the reason I would prefer that just spread out throughout the game is because then you happen upon things and it's like, I don't know. It's like somebody reaching out with a glass of water during a marathon and you're feeling a little stuck. You're trying to figure out what to do. And like, hey, here's a little joke. Here's a little thing to look at. Here's a little, boost of morale to keep you going. But when there's none of that at all, and then they put them all like in the card catalog, it's like, well, now I'm in this card catalog to find a thing, and all these jokes are in my way.
Yeah, it's true. I felt that way too. I'm like, I get it, very funny, haha. But
right.
Where's the thing? Exactly.
You can't actually appreciate them because they're all just annoying you by being in the way of what you're looking for. So I guess like if you were to go back a second time, then it might be more fun. But yeah, I didn't like that. He did that again in Thimbleweed Park as well with the library, right?
And the costume rental was funny. Guybrush Threepwood did wear a dress very well, and somehow, at least to me, didn't seem overly offensive about it.
Yeah, no, that was I mean that was fine. Anna and I aren't the easily offendable types anyway, but so I guess we're not the authority to declare that fine, I guess. But I mean. I enjoy laughing at things, so it was fine. It wasn't funny, but it was fine. I didn't think it was particularly funny, but it was fine. It wasn't not like in the spirit of what it was. Like, yeah, it's fine. It's just I don't know. Men wearing women's clothes for laughs has been done to death since the 70s. Like since the British discovered how funny it was.
Yeah.
Man, they're like. But it's a man, but he's in women's clothing. It's
oh
like,
my goodness,
it's outrageous. So like, it's just, I saw Bugs Bunny do it back in the day. Like, I get it. It's, it was a thing. But anyway, in the same year, Roger Wilco would also adorn a woman's dress. So Roger and his counterpart, in the same, because Space Quest 4 came out in that year.
Yeah, we're going to do a little bit of a comparison, at least talk about things that came out in the same timeline.
Yeah, exactly. We got some cool numbers, so stay tuned. But for now, let's force our way through.
Stan's coffin is there, right? So as I mentioned earlier, you get to lock him in the coffin. But I love the puzzle. I love everything Stan says. It's like you can go up and ring his bell while he's in the coffin. He's like, I'll just be there in a minute.
Right. One of the best gags in the game is when Stan measures Guybrush really quickly. I love that. It's so funny.
Me too.
Just sneaks a quick body measurement for the coffins. And then,
just real quick. You didn't even notice it happened. It's painless.
So good. I love the Steve Purcell-ness of the animations, too. They're so Sam and Maxie. They're so cartoony, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, they're really,
and
really
Sam
good.
is, or no, Max. Max is in the the one that's the bunny, because I always get confused. But he's in the costume shop in the corner. There's a little
in the forefront,
costume
and we
of
were
him.
talking off air at a normal private conversation. Whatever, private sounds so.
I don't even think we have those.
Right, yeah. but we were chatting about foregrounds and silhouette cutouts and everything, and how Sierra. Actually, now I'm just taking the opportunity to better articulate my point to Anna in front of everyone. How Sierra did more like silhouette cutouts of a room, so the room would have like a weird shape based on like the outside of the house or something. Like it was implied, I guess, by the silhouette. And then LucasArts did this cool thing where things would be like right up against the camera in the foreground and blurred.
Yeah, the shop actually on the island there, the one where the parrot is a really good example of that, because I was thinking about that when I was playing it, because he's just got like, I don't know, a ship's wheel and some random junk in the front, but it's used as framing in the foreground. Just so beautiful.
It's so effective. Yeah, it's a casualty of that it's something I can't do with Phantom Fellows because of the perspective. It's really sparingly. Like if there's only a single line they walk on, you can't really block that line. Like you can, but like it's got to be. It's not the same. It's definitely something that
2D.
gets lost in that. Yeah, exactly. It gets lost in the 2D-ness.
They also do it really well in the Voodoo Lady's place. They do some really nice framing in there.
They do, and they do. I really like some of the lighting, not lighting, but the way it transitions out of the Voodoo Lady's part of the room, and then like it kind of darkens. Like
me too. That also makes you think it's like a play or an act or a TV show. There's something that's not quite real about that whole setup.
Right. Exactly. I guess I think what Anne and I are slowly concluding is that it seems the most likely that it would have been kids playing and pretending at a theme park, rather than a different dimension or whatever, because it just seems really
to be
set up for that. Yeah. Okay, so where are we at? We're going to part 3, or were we at? No, yeah.
Is that where we do the ashes to life? That's in part 3, isn't it?
That's right. I think right before part 3.
Okay. I wanted to mention that because I love the ashes to life concept. I also love the guy that you bring back. He's kind of like, I think I left the gas on. Well, it turns out he did, and you can send him to his eternal rest, which is amazing. But it takes me to Return to Oz, because there's this like life-giving powder that you get from Mombi's, one of her head cases. And that's funny, she's a head case. But anyways, you go in and you put the powder of life on a gump, which is like a head of a moose attached to a couch, attached to some other fern, so that he can go off and fly around. And I've always loved the idea of powders bringing things that were never supposed to be brought to life, back to life.
Right. Yeah, that whole puzzle and scene is done really well. I really like how you. It's a bit of a fetch quest, but it's worth it, because it's kind of part of the gag, and the payoff is the work that you put in. But like you have to go to his hot dog stand, turn the gas off, and then go all the way back and be like, "You were right, it was on." I really like that. That was really, really good. Oh, yeah, it's a nice reference to that. And I like one of the dialogue lines you get to pick is, "You've shivered your last timber." When he's telling him he's dead. That's really good.
I like how they use, like, instead of it being give, open, close, like during the spitting contest, it's like hawk and lug and when things happen that are not supposed to happen, like all of it it'll change. I think that's funny. This game did really break the fourth wall. I was trying to explain to my husband what breaking the fourth wall and what meta was. And I was using Monkey Island 2 as an example.
As you should. Yeah. I mean, that is their thing. That is definitely the reason it's so rampant in modern adventure games, is because of everyone's love for these games. Like, make no mistake, right? It definitely comes. This is where it comes from. And it's, I don't know. I'm still a little prickly about it when it's like, okay, here's a half-baked example. I like there's a line in the game I really like where somebody asks Guybrush, "Is Guybrush French?" And he says, "No, it's fictional." Like, that's good. That's a great line. It could kind of work in the real world, but it's good. But then there's like another part where he's just like
the LucasArts hint line, for example.
That one's okay. I guess
because that one was pretty,
I mean, yeah, it's weird. I shouldn't say okay. Like that one's iconic is the problem. So I don't even know what to do with that. because it's so iconic. I've grown to appreciate it and like it. But a more like subtle example of what I didn't like, because there were moments when I was playing this game last night specifically when there was one or two of them and I was just like, like it did. I don't know. I hate to sound like this because I wish I was above this, but it made me feel a little less like lost in a world and more like, oh yeah, I'm playing a game. Like I don't know what it is. It just annoyed me a little. But they were like, what's the example? He makes an adventure game joke where he's just like, why are I can't think of one. Dang, that's a shame because I have half of a good example here. There's a few times where they just call it right out, where they're just like, you're playing a game, or like you can't do that in this game, and it's like, okay, that's a little on the nose, man. Like maybe that's my line is at the very end, but it's like just like one before 100%. Like maybe just not that last little bit where you're like, this is a game. But whatever. That all sounds quite pretentious, and I regret saying it. But here we are. So, part 3.
Guybrush. This is, I think, kind of where he traps himself in a crate, doesn't it? Or is that?
Yeah, I think that kicks off part 3.
Right, because I wanted to mention, I took a note on this saying that another thing that kind of led me to believe that he's children is he was stuck in the crate for 5 days and 5 nights, and he was forced to eat bat lungs and eel bladders. And it's like, if you're a kid and you're like, what are 2 of the grossest things ever that you could ever eat? You'd be like, I don't know, like bat lungs, and then your friend would be like, eel bladders, and you guys would both go, ew, gross.
Yeah, that's cool. I like how you're framing it around that too. It definitely adds a lot more to the case too, where you hear these childlike, like not just from Guybrush, but from like the framing of the narration of the story. Right. There was the the objective asshole in me was just like, you can go 5 days without eating.
and it's the same too with the song, the hip bones, because the next you have to figure out, like, you get this rhyme and it has like, yeah, I hated it too. But isn't that it's a children's song? It's a preschool song. It's the kind of song you'd learn when you're first starting to school and you're little. So, of course, that would be like, and it was kind of the most convoluted puzzle, I suppose, in the game. And I hated it at first, and then I quit when I got to it. But then when I started playing the next time and I actually sat down with the screenshot of the whole write-up, I felt better about it.
Yeah, I didn't like anything about it. I really didn't like the singing for the song, too. It's really annoying. It's really tough to take. There's the girl who sings does that, like, I don't know, 1920s kind of Betty Boopish sort of singing. And it's just so screeching, like, it's just the worst, man. It really bothered me. But I loved it. It comes good halfway through, because halfway through Guybrush starts dancing. And that was really cute. I like how they make him wait. Like, he waits a while and then he starts dancing, because it's like, okay, fine, it's a little catchy. And then he even dances as he takes the notes down. Yeah, that puzzle was just, it felt really forced. It was really
It was forced after. You go through this whole puzzle just to get in a giant door, which has a doggy door, so you could get into LeChuck's chamber. But all you can do while you're in there is take a key.
Thank you. Hold on. So sorry. Because that's the line I was trying to use to make my example a minute ago, where he said, that's too many locks to get through, even for an adventure game.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Right.
Thank you. So, and that's just, again, like maybe everything but those kinds of lines where it's just like, okay, you don't have to remind me I'm playing a game. Somehow, like, calling the Lucas Hint sign almost feels different than that. I don't know why. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry. So you go through the doggy door. Are you saying that it felt like a little insulting because by the time you get there, you just walk through it?
Yeah, I mean, by the time you do all this trouble to get into his room, and I'm trying to look around the room or activate it or make something happen, and it's like, oh, there's a key, how exciting, and then boom, he's caught you and you're out. There wasn't even any looking points. Like, what's the cool stuff in here? What can I see? Nothing. A key. Okay.
Right. There was a few moments where to advance the story, you have to lose the map or get caught. And those are always a little like, dang it, that was a lot of work. Like, it does feel like a loss. Did you get the point? I got the impression that there were some parts of this game that were extensions of gameplay.
Like, what do you mean?
Like they were just there to make the game longer.
Oh yeah, I think there was a few of those in there.
Like, maybe they felt the first one wasn't long enough, or I don't know. It just seemed like when the game breaks down a little, I feel like it was because of that. It was like weird runtime based things, like backtracky things and stuff that just made the game a little longer, but it wasn't a benefit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of games end up for that. We need the playtime to be a little bit longer. We have to warrant the $59.95 price.
Yeah, none of them are basically free from that sin, for sure. It just...
But they also, they took some liberties. Like, for example, when you do finally loogie the light off after LeChuck captures you, it just, the screen goes black and you don't have to figure out how to get out. You just automatically, the game gets you out while the screen's black.
Right. Right, good point. And the first game does a lot of that, which I really like. You know, you don't have to backtrack out of the underground and stuff like that. It's almost as if they were like, maybe less of that, because that makes the game shorter, guys, and people need their... in other words, in defense of the developers, it definitely feels like a higher-up decision. Like, hey, we need a little more runtime, boys. You know, don't be afraid to,
expand.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, then the mayor puzzle could really essentially be put under that category.
Right. There was a few puzzles that did feel a little redundant. I don't know, something like that, where it just felt like it was a lot of work, and then at the end of the day, it didn't really... It opens up the next thing you have to do, but it doesn't really accomplish a thing. But I don't know. That's nitpicky, because I had a lot of fun regardless, so it doesn't really matter.
So what happens is you guys do get free of LeChuck's chamber, because you get to make my spit is thick.
Right.
And you get to do that, and you get to spit yourself out of there. The screen goes black, you guys disappear, and then you light a match to figure out where you are, and you blow it up. And I was talking to my mom about the game, and she said, it sounds like a game that was made by guys with guys in it. And I said, why? And she said, well, boys are always saying that blowed up real good, and girls are always saying that cleaned up real good.
That's great. That's interesting, right? That's really adorable. Okay, you get blown up onto the island, and then one of the best bits in the whole game is the enlightened, meditating Rottooth.
Yep.
I don't know if I said Rottooth, but...
Because now he's all up in philosophy, so this is where he leads you in. Now, my husband came in during the joke where he's telling you he's trying to get you to figure out if a tree falls in the forest, what color is it? And it took me forever, because I was like, I'd answer like 5 or 6 and say, well, that's silly, because I forgot about this puzzle and I wandered away. And I'm like, well, now I'm in the jungle. I don't know what to do. And it took me. And then finally I said to my husband, I'm like, I think I'm just going to keep clicking through and to find the thing. And then I did. And I was calling out all the things that was saying. And he's just in the other room going, oh, my God, your game is so weird. But it worked.
That's another Ron Gilbert thing is walking through the woods. He seems to really enjoy that, and it's very borderline mazy. You do it in the first Monkey Island, and then you do it again in the second Monkey Island, where you have to figure out where to go and then if you're not playing the short version, you do it again in Thimbleweed Park. There's a scene there too where you have to basically just walk around the woods, and all the screens kind of look the same, and it's weird. I was thinking about it a lot last night. I just think it's weird for Ron Gilbert, because he's all about clean, air quotes, perfect design. Like there shouldn't be any, frustrating bullshit. And it's like, that's frustrating bullshit. It's not enjoyable to just walk confused through woods of screens that all kind of look the same, just trying to get spit out to the place you're supposed to be, but often getting spit back to the start. It doesn't seem to fit his otherwise pretty flawless design of adventure games, and yet he's done it in 3 games that I can think of.
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird.
We are our own worst but best critics, and I don't know.
But he must enjoy it, because it's in I don't know. I don't know. Okay.
Well, I mean, same Al Lowe likes mazes too, right? I guess some of them just like mazes. Actually, they all have. Maze is a time extender. I think that was like the protocol. Okay, there's a big list of things you need for every single adventure game. And if you don't have these items, you can't make a game. And one of them is it has to be a maze in a forest or in a set of tunnels.
Right, and I guess that's why I'm wondering what's up with Gilbert. That's why I'm assuming he likes it, is because it's in Thimbleweed. Like, they didn't need to extend the gameplay in that game. 1, because it was Kickstarted, they were their own bosses, and 2, because the game's gigantic on its own. But it's like, I have to assume he kind of likes it. Like, there's something about it I don't get that other people do. There must be an enjoyment there that I just don't see. maybe it's just the moment of when you finally, we talk a lot, at risk of being hypocritical, we talk a lot about you put the work in, and if you don't put the work in, then you don't get the dopamine hit. So maybe this is just his take on that, where it's like that is the work. You have to get through this thing, and then when you emerge victoriously throughout the other side of it, then you get the dopamine hit. Like maybe that's just his version.
He's just a dopamine dealer, man.
Addict, a bloody addict. Yeah, just
we
looking
all
for those
are,
hits.
aren't we? It gets hard to get those hits when we're older, so we have to have extra mazes and forest scenes to get that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're coming to the end here. So because we've touched on the parrot, the dinosaurs, the sill, Herman. You get to the X, you dig the hole, you use a little dynamite. The game loops back to the beginning, and then spits you off in the end. And that's when you come across LeChuck, who may or may not put you in another dimension.
And that's where it gets kind of interesting too, especially with watching the OneShortEye and finding out a little bit more about the R&D with LeChuck, which I thought was really interesting, because he said there's a 9-sided die is rolled whether LeChuck shows up at the end of the game area or not when you're in each position. And then there's a fast LeChuck and a slow LeChuck. Fast LeChuck comes every 5 seconds, and slow LeChuck comes, after I think every 15 or 20 seconds. So there's so many variables going into the last scenes with LeChuck. It's pretty wild.
Right. That's cool. That's cool to know, because it seems like it felt like the first 3 or 4 times I kept getting fast LeChuck. It seemed almost like CPU clock speed problems. I'm like, is this normal? Like,
I can't even do anything.
Yeah,
I'm completely blocked, and now I'm in a room, and he showed up immediately. And then other times you have to stand there, like waiting in the elevator for him to come in. It's like, oh my God, is he ever going to show up?
Okay, let's bring this thing home and tackle some last little points. I wanted to mention quickly the palette shifting, or I guess you would say was palette cycling, I think is a better way to put it, that is utilized in this game and a lot of games, and I think Mark Ferrari more or less pioneered it, but it's really cool, and it's on display here in the waterfall. And it's just a neat little technical thing that's going on that really saved on disk space back in the day, but it also looks just insanely cool. So if you could picture the waterfall on Monkey Island 2, that's a really good example of palette cycling. And what's going on there is that instead of moving the pixels, and another another good example of this happening is the Sierra logo at the beginning of games when the fanfare plays and you see the Sierra logo and it reflects like a coin catching light. That's another really good example of palette cycling. So what happens?
It sounds like a coin too.
Right. Yeah. It kind of does. Yeah. So what they're doing is that they're not changing pixels as you would in, let's say, an animation. The pixels stay exactly where they are. They just assign a different color to the pixel.
Right.
And so in the sense of like fluidity and even things like the stars in the sky on Monkey Island 2, but again, the waterfall is the best example, is that it just looks like perfectly smooth. It's almost a bit of like an illusion, because again, the pixels are staying still, but the color is like washing through them. And it's really cool. So anybody who isn't aware of it and is a fan of that stuff, there's an app called Living Worlds. I have to assume it's on Android too, but it's definitely on iOS, and it's Mark Ferrari's work. It was first released in like 1993 as part of like a calendar program. Right. But it's a palette of 256 colors that animate by cycling or shifting positions within the palette, which creates this illusion of movement that I was saying. And again, this was all pretty popular back in the day as far as like the 90s and things like that. It did really good for like weather effects and rain, snow, stuff like that. And anyway, the app's really cool. It's basically I think 12 of these images, and you can cycle them through like day and night. And again, it's just really cool, especially when you know what's going on behind the scenes. And obviously it's all pixely and has old school vibes. So highly recommend that. It's checking it out. It's called Living Worlds.
Yeah, thanks. That's cool.
And then other than that, I've got a few little, offhand notes. One thing I wanted to mention earlier that I didn't get a chance to was just to say that I love in the library that you narrate to yourself and get shushed for it.
Yeah, me too. That's actually, that's that whole fourth wall thing that I like.
Yeah, exactly. That's a nice light touch. And then I wanted to talk about sales, reception, and before I do that, also the differences in the Monkey Light version. I'm not sure. I'm going to guess that almost everybody listening has probably never played the light version. Because, it's like, are we doing this or not?
Yeah, would somebody actually play that on purpose? Because I thought that was a joke. Like, who would even... But then I realized, I was reading interviews, and they were saying that it was mostly for reviewers and people that wanted to, just write stuff about the game, reporters and things, not regular players.
Right, and I like the way they did that because they made it kind of a joke that we all knew was true. And it's funny as we've come to learn, is that when you send a game to reviewers, you send them the walkthrough too. Like, they just want to get through the fucking thing. And it's like, a huge part of your soul and heart is like, yeah, but, to really judge it, you have to, like, truly play it. And, like, they don't have time for that. They don't care. So, like, they just want to get through the game. And so LucasArts kind of sells it as a joke. Like, yeah, it's for reviewers because you guys don't care. But it's like, they really don't. And they do just want to get a feel for the whole thing and then judge it harshly based on that. But anyway, the light version basically just cuts out a bunch of backtracking. It cuts out, like, it makes the 4 pieces of the map a lot similar. It was really hard to get specifics on this, but essentially things like finding the 4 pieces of the map and anything that was like multi-step.
That's crazy.
Yeah, any multi-step puzzle, exactly. Was reduced. And we didn't I think because I regret this, didn't I suggest you play the light version of Thimbleweed?
Yeah, but I didn't. I ended up playing the light version on the tablet, but then when we went to go do the actual episode, I played it on the computer and I did the full version. And I remember being super frustrated in the doors area where you have to like go, because in the light version, you didn't have to do that part at all.
Oh, right, where they spit you out in different areas. See, that's another weird thing Gilbert must like, because there's a lot of that in this
He
game
did it
too.
in the first Monkey Island a lot.
Right.
The whole town of the first Monkey Island was like that.
Right, and then the bone puzzle in Monkey Island 2 is a similar situation. Interesting. Well, speaking of which, too, I will say, because I adore Thimbleweed Park, as the listeners know, I think it's one of the best of all time, and I think it's everything Gilbert wanted to accomplish in this game pulled off better. I guess that's a pretty bold statement, because I would guess most of our listeners like Monkey Island 2 more than Thimbleweed Park, but I think Thimbleweed Park is better.
The ending
threw
threw people off. I think the ending, for whatever reason, took 20% of the people that would have been fans of the game and took it away from them. And I don't blame the ending for it either.
Well, it did. Okay, well, so circle back there. So what would you blame? Or you just disagree with them?
The people who,
okay,
I just disagree with the people that think it sucked. Because I'm like, I
Nice.
thought that was a great ending. And they're like, well, it was so, I heard a lot of statements like nihilism, like, who cares then? Nothing I did in the game mattered. Why did I even bother playing if that was the case? And I don't really feel that way.
Yeah, I feel like that is, again, that's to misunderstand the point of an adventure. It's not about the very, very end. It's about everything that you did getting there. I don't get that mind frame, right, where it's like only the last thing that happens matters.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? That's to disregard the entire journey.
I know. I use that in conversation, though. It can be a really difficult conversation with somebody, but as long as at the end everybody acts normal and it's all cool, people come away with it going, oh, man, that wasn't so bad.
Right. Yeah, it has its pros and cons, and that's fair. Well, to your point with the Thimbleweed thing, I believe that's exactly what happened with this game. I think a lot of people don't and I know that to be the case because I was looking at YouTube comments for this game, and there's people today still being like, I hate the ending. I hated it then, I hate it now. Literally, that was one of the statements.
Wow.
I hated it then, and I hate it now was one of the statements. Like, people just, that same 20%, let's say, and that might be generous. I think it's more than that. They just don't like the idea of, and look, I get it. It has to be done, it has to be handled with care. You can't just be like, the whole thing was a dream. Because that's often like their straw man argument. Well, it's like, well, the whole thing might as well have just been a dream. And it's like, well,
Didn't
look.
we play a game recently that ended like that? I can't even remember now.
I don't know. I can't remember either.
I don't know. Buddy woke up and the whole thing was a dream. Or maybe it was just something I played recently. It's just usually the only games I play are for the podcast, so I'm just automatically assuming.
Right.
It's like, why? Well, I did say it yesterday to my husband. I said, how lucky am I to be in a position where I framed it so that I'm sitting there going, oh, I can't believe I need to play more video games.
Yeah, exactly. Damn it. Got to play Monkey Island tonight. Son of a bitch.
He's like, come on, I want to play Heroes of Might and Magic. I'm like, sorry, all Monkey Island right now. And he's like, well, maybe in an hour after you're done playing Monkey Island. I'm like, maybe.
I would say in defense of this game and in Thimbleweed Park is that it makes you think, and it helps. It creates fan theories. It creates more to talk about, and I think it's just more interesting than a vanilla, nice and tidy ending. I think for the more conscientious types, the less open types, it's irking, or like I need to, for the types that just want to be told what to do, that want a clear set of instructions. And fair enough. There's so many things about people like that I wish I had in me, such as being able to have a stable routine, and you know what I mean. Like things that come, perks of that are things like organization and sticking to a daily routine. And I have to remember that maybe this introduces a little too much chaos. Like loose ends can be a little too chaotic, and so I'm trying to understand why people don't like the ending of this game. But at the end of the day, I think it's better for it than not, and we'll figure out what happens in return when we play that. But okay, so let's move on to development facts and then get out of here. So quick little postmortem whatever facts. We could skip all of that.
We did mention we were going to say what else kind of came out that year, which we did allude to being it was certain Space Quest games and some various other things in the timeline.
Right. Okay. So we'll say, so the sales for this game initially sold 25,000 units, which was really, really poor at the time. And it caused LucasArts they wanted to shift to like broader market titles such as Full Throttle, like things that weren't, they felt that Monkey Island was maybe
Star
too niche,
Wars.
Like, things that everybody would want to be, I guess. And honestly, what they followed up with doesn't really track with that. So I'm not sure even the source of where that came from. But it, it's one of those things, if anybody listening was to like do a 20-minute research, you would come to these same kind of chunks of quotes that I'm getting here, where it's just like that would, modest sales prompted them to shift to a broader market title like Full Throttle. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Because they would go on to do Day of the Tentacle, which doesn't seem a lot different than Monkey Island in name, in spirit, in gameplay. Like, I don't really buy that. But regardless, it didn't sell very well. It sold 25,000 units. To compare, again, well, we did that last time. King's Quest V came out the year before that. So here, let's compare for the same year. We have Space Quest 4 came out, and while there are no actual numbers for Space Quest 4, we do know that it sold more than the first 3 Space Quests combined, and we know what the first 3 games sold. Space Quest 1 was 100,000 copies, Space Quest 2 and 3 each sold 200,000 copies. So therefore, Space Quest 4 sold somewhere between 500 and 600,000 copies, compared to 25,000. So we like to defend Sierra a lot because they get pitted as like the monolith, and we're like, hey, but Ken and Roberta were just a couple who started out by putting floppy disks in a bag, and that's all true. And Lucas of LucasArts is a billionaire, and he did just give everybody, an office in Skywalker Ranch and said, don't lose money. So this doesn't undermine all of that, but the reason why people feel like Sierra was not the underdog is for reasons like this. Sierra was selling Space Quest, 500,000 copies of Space Quest 4, and LucasArts was only selling 25,000 of their flagship.
Good point.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
And then same goes with Larry 5. We don't have actual figures on Larry 5, but we do have comparative figures, and I'll spare you guys all the whatever because we just did that with Space Quest 4. But it likely sold between 150 and 250,000 copies. So even Larry 5 quite slaughtered it, and even Ann and I don't like Larry 5, but I also just thought it was fun to know, like, we walked out of this knowing that both Monkey Island games sold roughly 25,000 copies, and that King's Quest V sold the same amount as Space Quest 4. It honestly sounds like Space Quest 4 actually sold a little better than Space Quest 5, so that's interesting. I think rightfully so, but interesting nonetheless. And then Larry, in perspective to Space Quest and King's Quest, falls exactly where I would have guessed, about half of that, especially because it was Larry 5 by then. So, yeah. All right, that's all I got.
That's it.
That's it. We're done. You have anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I want to play more Monkey. Paul wasn't sure. He's like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do, 3 in a row and kind of keep hitting the Monkey Island. And I was like, I'm kind of sucked into the world now. I kind of can't stop. And that means that if we choose another subject, I have to play the game and do whatever our podcast is about. So he relented and was like, okay, you know what? Maybe we will. And maybe a little bit to do with that was the fact that we got a message from a listener of the podcast.
Michael Locke, yes.
Right. I was going to use his screen name, but yes. And
do the discreet screen name instead.
That's all right. Baron Blubba. It's great. I love that so much. Anyways, he wrote a really cool message, and a part of it was saying he had a few things he wanted to voice, some problems he had with the first Monkey Island game, but that we took that ability away because we already voiced all of it. So I'm curious to see what you'd have to say about the second one if we hear back from you again. That was really interesting. We really appreciate that. It's nice to get an email, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. Mm-hmm. I love a good electronic piece of mail.
And okay, and I would also, I'm just going to jump into Patreon here and realize that I left the page that I was on.
While you're finding it, everybody who's listening, please leave a review for the Phantom Fellows. I still have no reviews. Thank you to those who have left reviews though, because I am grateful for that. But man, we were getting slaughtered by the other games that came out this year as far as amount of reviews. So if you played the game, please, as we're spewing this bullshit into your ears for the last 2 minutes, open up your little Steam thingy and just give it a thumbs up or give it a whatever. Definitely. If you didn't like the game, please don't. That's just devastating to my self-esteem and confidence. But if you like the game, if you wouldn't mind giving it a really quick review, you could say, "Is game had fun?" And that's a review with a thumbs up. It's good enough for me. So I would deeply, deeply appreciate that. And again, thank you to those who already have.
Yes, indeed. And I would also like to say thank you to Christopher, who is a new old Patreoner, joining back in at the True Believer Pledge. And I really appreciate that. Thanks for that, Christopher. Gareth as well. Mick, who has been a contributor as well to the podcast for a long time. Some of you lovely people, and I know I don't mention every single name every time, but some of you lovely people have been pretty much with us since the podcast started, and I just want to take a second to point it out and say thanks. I definitely notice and really appreciate that. Also, Brian Manown, Chapman, Crothers, Jay Holmes, Jeffrey Couch, Mark Fillion, all of you, and Tim Ellis in the True Believer tier. Thank you so much. Just for giving us the opportunity to continue doing the podcast and to show that people do care and somehow still want to listen to Paul and I talk about adventure games even after all of these years.
Yeah, so. Thank you guys. We love you. This will be our 7th year.
Yeah, something like that.
Exactly that, in October. Yeah.
Wow, that's insane. So, all right.
So,
and do you have anything you want to say before I go into the last blurb here?
No.
Or are you good?
Yeah.
You're good. It's so awkward. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to
6.5 years of stumbling through this ending. No, I just have to urinate. That's my little air of curtness here at the end. Like, yep, no, we're good.
Yep, we're fine. No, I took the opportunity.
If I laugh,
to do that.
I will pee a little. Is where I'm at in this stage of urination. Yeah.
Well, quickly, before Paul pees the chair, come say hi to us on Twitter at CGG Podcast or at the Phantom Fellows, as well on Blue Sky. You can also find all sorts of information about the game. You can get a guide, you can get a strategy guide and a walkthrough and soundtracks and links to just about everything at thephantomfellows.com. Maybe you bought it on one platform, but you want to buy it on another platform or 3 other platforms. You can do that all from that website. So that's pretty cool. You can email us, mail@cggpodcast.com. We read it, we share the email, we talk about the email. We don't always writingly respond to the email, but verbally we try to respond to it and really super duper appreciate it. We're also on Facebook, we're a page, we're a group, we're on Instagram and YouTube. Thank you for listening.
Don't you?
Let my kid go back in his room. Hold on.
Back in your hole.
He's looking at me. I'm looking at him, giving him the evil eye there. Said close the door. He's busy in his bedroom playing with 30-something-year-old men.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That will not be the clip I put at the end of the show.
No, don't.